Great. Okay. So welcome to the second show of Mery Miguez in Conversations. And today we have Nanne Lotzkat as a guest. Nanne and I are friends since a year ago. I think really we met in person, and before we met here online, but last year is going to be a year that we did together a program in Chascomús in Argentina where she lives. And all this year I've done so many things with her, and I really, really like her work and her presence. And I think some of you at least know her, have been here either in this forum or in her posts. Great. So I invited Nanne because, since I've been doing SPT, there's always been this thing, constellations, SPT, are they the same? Are they different? Like, oh yes, that exercise reminds me to SPT, or that exercise reminds me to constellations. And Nanne has been working with constellations and helping people in organizations and with their how to say this in English, with their working situations, or anything that has to do with the work itself. And she has been using constellations, and she also has just finished the advanced SPT training in Uruguay, and has been doing lots of SPT as well. So I thought, why not bring Nanne and to just bring up this, open up this conversation, because as we all know, in these conversations we all have a piece of the knowledge. It's not just the presenter or whoever is starting the conversation. So with this, I'm just going to let Nanne tell us all her thoughts and everything that she prepared to start this conversation. But before that, I just realized we need to do a little sitting meditation. So I'm gonna grab we're just gonna do about 3 minutes of centering. And for that, let's just place our attention on the breath. And with that, on the sensation of the body breathing. Let your attention rest in that sensation. Okay. And I also want to say that something else about Nanne. She is originally from Germany. She's been in Argentina for about 15 years or so. And she's a renowned teacher of constellations at the Center of Family Constellations in Buenos Aires. And I am really, really happy to learn from her now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mery. Thanks for the invitation, and it's a great pleasure, as usual, to do something together. Hopefully something unusual. That's what is most fun for Mery and me to do together. Great to see the four of you, and very relaxing that we've all met before, and on this platform, not yet in real life. I'm very optimistic that it might happen one day. So, do I have to say a bit about myself? Or can I plunge into
If you like, I said
Denise nodded, so yes, I have. So, yes, I've been working with people and with people in organizations for, I guess, more than my working life. And I've studied economics and did a lot of classical consulting in organizations in Germany way back. And well, it doesn't take long to realize that all facts are good, but what counts is what you can realize. And what you can achieve and realize in an organization does not only depend on fact sheets and logical thoughts and rentable investments. It has got to do a lot with what happens between people. So quickly I started to find out that I needed to get to know what happens between people. And so I found, I did loads of trainings. I mean, I love to learn, and I will always learn, and I always find a new training which I find interesting. I'm not gonna name them all, but I'm gonna tell you about the three that affected me and my actual work most. The first is Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. The second is systemic constellation work, which was mostly generally founded by Bert Hellinger. And the third is social presence in theater. And so, as I guess most people who accompany people or organizations do, they mix and mash their methods. And as I say to people who ask, well, you know, how do you introduce certain techniques in organizations? Well, because I don't talk about them. I don't sell the technique. I don't go and say, well, you know, I can give you a constellation, or I can do a practice from social presence in theater with you. I just use the practices to help them solve their problems. I think that's the main thing. In the last couple of years, I also started to work with individuals, I guess even more than whole organizations and groups. So yeah, that's kind of my background. So many people think or say that constellation and social presence in theater seems similar. I think, Mery, you say it's like you feel like they are related, no?
Like cousins, like first cousins.
Like first cousins, okay. So to be quite honest, I don't know. So if anybody expects to get a definite answer, I invite you to just save the hour and leave listening, because I don't know. What I have is a couple of first ideas, which I want to share with you. And of course, I want to listen to you, what your insights are and what your ideas are. Okay, so to give it a bit of structure, I've prepared a PowerPoint presentation, which is also a first draft version, because of course I finished it like 10 minutes ago. Well, 15, because then the last 10 minutes, my dear husband translated the Spanish version to English. So you're the lucky ones this time. Because I would have had no problems in using the Spanish one and do what happens to most Spanish-speaking people in many programs, that they have to read something which they don't understand and try to make sense of it. But luckily, we have it in English. So let me see. Can I share the yes, I can. Use the share.
Yeah.
And where's my PowerPoint? Mm-hmm. I will get there, don't worry. Okay, that's it. Or maybe not. Zoom, share screen, and there it is. Great. So nice when it works. As we are a small group, of course, if you have any questions in the meanwhile, or whilst I'm talking, I'm very happy to listen to you. Can you see the screen now? Okay, that's good. So, social presencing theatre and systemic constellation work. This is my first approximation on the Mery Miguez show. At the bottom it still says in Spanish, thankfully, the versión preliminar no terminada. It's an unfinished first version. Okay. So, the next slide, or first slide. So my starting point is, at first glance, what are the similarities between the systemic constellation work and social presencing theatre? Well, what I found is both use the body as a receiver for something that happens. Both start from a place of not knowing. And both work with the social field. And then I put a lot of dots. So if you have any ideas, I don't know if all of you know constellation work. So if anything comes to your mind, then I'm very glad to add it. Because I sure missed a lot of things which are probably on first sight very similar.
I'm not at all familiar with constellations, so are you going to kind of define it and give a little bit of an overview of what it is? I don't know if others are all very familiar with it or not.
Yes, maybe I hadn't planned to do it so much in detail as I will do now, because obviously if people don't know what constellation work is, then we have to explain a bit what it is. So that's a very good point. Thank you, Denise. So then let me just go on, and then when we can also come back afterwards and think about what, for people who do know what it is, or have heard for it first time, and say, well, but is this not also similar? Because that can help a lot, because especially if we don't know, we generally have the best ideas. Okay? Okay. So that would be like the starting point. And of course, there are also quite obvious differences. And the one I want to point out is that the main difference is the theoretical basis. So one is the orders of love, founded by Bert Hellinger, and the others is the theory U by Otto Scharmer and Arawan Hayashi. I'll come to that on the next slide. So, as I didn't know where to start. I thought, well, let's start at the beginning. So who developed each of the methods? So the constellation work was developed by Bert Hellinger, and he's a priest and a therapist. The social presencing and theater work was developed by Arawana Hayashi. She's a dancer, choreographer, is that right in English? And a teacher, or how do you say maestro, from meditation?
Yes, meditation teachers here.
Meditation teacher, thank you. And then I thought, well, you know, what was the context of each of the people to find the work they are doing? So in the case of Bert Hellinger, it was, in a nutshell, observing phenomena in social systems. That's how he found the method of working, and also the philosophy he developed behind these works, which are, as I just said, the orders of love, also called systemic laws, defined by Bert Hellinger. And Arawana, I think, I'm happy to be corrected here, that her dance practice led her to detect that there is so much to what is expressed in the individual body and in the social body. And when she, not he, met with Otto Scharmer, she was able to shape it to a use of different practices, 7, in social transformation and leadership processes. So what's the point? That's a nice translation of what do they aim for, was what I was trying to say. But what's the point is nice, I like it. So, and I think the answer is okay with the question. So in the constellation work, I would say the main point is healing in systems. And the constellation work was actually developed in difficult situations in families. So it's very related to family therapy, but it has then quickly been adapted to other social systems. So myself, I'm not working a lot in therapeutical contexts, but I'm using the constellation work for work-related problems and in organizations. And yeah, it's always about healing something, I think. Whereas the social presencing theater work, I put as the point is connecting with future possibilities. Let me just close the door because there's much background noise. Sorry about the interruption. Okay. So my first approach is to, before I come to that, maybe I will explain a bit about how constellations work, or yeah, what it is. In constellations, we usually work with one client who has a problem he or she can't resolve. And what we say is that it's especially good if you've also already tried out many different things and still haven't found a solution. Because then we kind of suspect that there is in what you feel as your personal problem, that it is not your problem, but that it comes to you because of a systemic context. Okay? So it's not just something is broken and I need to fix it with a tool. It's something that is maybe broken, and whatever I do, it always comes back like a pattern. And then what we'll do is, like, we look at the system and not at the problem. We look, okay, so what forms part of the system of this problem, which persons or other aspects. And then we use either people as representatives or objects as representatives. And we make, or let the client put these representatives in a three-dimensional picture. And then we work with what these representatives feel in relation to each other. And usually what comes up is a movement which brings us to a picture which is somehow felt better by the person who put the problem. I don't want to say it's the solution picture, but I guess it is. So that's more or less what happens in constellation work. Yep. Is that clear? Does that make sense without having seen anything, just listening to it? Okay, I see nodding heads. Okay, then let's, because you all know some of the social presencing theater, so I don't need to get into this at the moment, no? So let's see what, at first glance, I think what they have in common and how they are different. So that would be the how do we say, the column in the middle. I found like 4 aspects. I'm sure there are more, and we will find out together. So I think both work with attention in the present. So the connection with ourselves, the moment, and what is happening is important. And then I thought there are many differences, not only one error really, but for now I have, with luck, 1 error in each, with each subject, but we will have more when this is finished or more progressed in one time. So in social presencing theater, I think we are talking about a daily or at least regular practice. And the meditation, the contemplative, is more prominent. I don't know of any constellation practitioners, so we use constellation work more as a method. But when we use it, the attention in the present is very important. I'm also happy to be contradicted at any point of this presentation, now or later. So proven wrong is a pleasure for me. The second point is we are working with what happens in that moment. And this is for me a bit of a difference because it has to do with something which means what we do with both practices is something which is true at that moment in time. And it can only happen at that moment in time. Okay, this is kind of, for me, something important in both practices. The difference is, or maybe a difference is, that in constellation works, we say the field speaks. Whereas in social presencing theater, I would say the body speaks. Or now I'm thinking, is it the body or the bodies? Because we're usually working with 3 bodies, but we'll come to that maybe later. What do they have in common? How are they different? The third point I found is the no intention. So the idea is when with either of the methods, and that's why sometimes it's a bit difficult to convince people in organization to use it. We cannot tell them what the result of the matter will be. And in organizations, people think they have to know the result before we get there. This is a process, and we do not know what comes out of it. That's what I mean with no agenda, no intention. There is, for me, a difference, because as I said before, in constellation works, there is an intention of healing. And in social presence in theater, in one of the last trainings I did with Arawana Hayashi, I think I was shocked to hear that one of the instruments I used as a problem-solving instrument, the stuck exercise, is not meant as a solution, as a problem solution instrument. Because, as she says, there is nothing to be fixed. So it's like, I feel like the intentionlessness is even more profound, or more prominent, to say it more in a more neutral form. So, and I think I said that before, both part from a place of not knowing, which I find very pleasurable, and some people find it very uncomfortable. And there are these two sentences where it's again very similar, because one of the main, or the first thing we do in constellation work is we recognize what is. And this, in my experience, in any help situation, be it a person or an organization, is a big step. Because if we think about ourselves when in the general, in daily life, no, or even at work, we very often do not recognize what is. We live in our world how we want it to be, or how it could be. But we don't really realize, we don't really recognize what is. My typical example for this is the entrepreneur. Somebody who has a great idea and a great project, and starts to work on it. And after 5 years, he still has a great idea and a great project, and tells me all about how good it could be working. But he never sees that for the last 5 years, he was not able to live on it. He was not able to make money with it. Okay, this is a typical example for me too. How many times we just don't want to see what is. So recognize what is, see what is really out there in the world. I think that is the basis for any change. And I think it's a big work we have to do, all of us in the small things. Well, and from Arawana, I already said, he has this saying which still resonates in me, and I'm still working on it, that supposedly there is nothing to fix in this world. Okay. So in particular, or in concrete, in how we work, there's just this kind of very general, because in both approaches there are like very different ways of working, different styles, different approaches, different mixtures. But in general, I would say in systemic constellation work, we have a specific request from an individual. There's some issue to be resolved. And I find in social presence in theater, many times it's more like an exploration of a situation. It's not so much I have a problem and I'm looking for a solution, but it's more that I have a situation, and where can this situation go? So there's not necessarily a specific, here it says order, but it would be a specific request. Yeah. And in systemic constellation work, there's also a difference. So we use people or objects to represent system members. It's not role play. We don't ask them to think or how this representation is to be. But yes, we say, well, you go into the field and you go into the field as, for example, this family member, not knowing any about the story, and your body will kind of resonate with what this family member might be feeling in relation to the other elements of the system which are in the field at that moment. So in social presencing theater, we work, in many practices, we work with, first of all, with the individual body. And the individual body, as you all know, can do two things, can be still and can move. And then we work, that's what I said before, with the three bodies, with the body of Mother Earth, which we are always and with the social body. Yep. So, yeah.
So practically that last part, how does that look different? Because I feel like in a 4D mapping, for instance, you are representing, so that feels very similar.
Well, I think that there is a difference between representing and constellation work and what we call roles or players in the 4D mapping. I'm not sure if what is working is not the same. It probably is. But in the 4D mapping, we make sure that the people don't dive too deep into the energy which is in this field. We give them just little time to feel, well, what is the movement I would do in this? Okay, and then they wait for everybody else for the movement. They're not allowed to do anything whilst anybody else is moving. Okay, they can just perceive what happens when everybody else comes in. They're not really moving, they're only coming in. It's like a step. Okay, and then together, and this is also different in constellation work, then together they find a second sculpture and a different ending to the story. Yeah, well,
Can I say something?
Yes, Mary, please help me.
Okay, I'm just, in my experience, because I also do constellations, the work, once that, I'm gonna call them people for now, before we call them representatives or players, the people are asked to somewhat work in a different way once they enter the field, because they both enter a field. Basically, they're asked to work, to relate to the field in a different way. So in the constellation, and that's why to me the word is representative, because they're representing this member of the system, whether it's the mother or it's the boss or it's the great-great-great-grandparent. So they're representing, they're not them, they're not, it's not Mery once I enter, it's this representation, I'm representing this member. And so what is happening once I enter the field, because of the intention of the facilitator, so the intention of the facilitator to me is also another difference. The intention of the facilitator in Constellation is creating that field, plus the client that's coming with this situation that they want to work. So when the person enters, they start connecting with what is called the morphogenic fields. They start connecting with something that this person actually felt. So for example, one time it happened to me that as soon as I entered, I started feeling a huge pain in my right knee. And I didn't have that before I entered. And the person I was representing, she was about to have a knee surgery. She couldn't stay because of the pain in her knee. So at that level, there is sometimes this connection that happens with the person you're representing. In SPT, the person is asked to feel their body. There is no other connection with anything behind or before. To feel their body, and from feeling their body in the space, they're also feeling, they're almost like extending that the thing that happens when we do 20-minute dance. Once we synchronize mind and body, we naturally start noticing and feeling the other people in the space. We're noticing if we are in a lower level, we notice somebody standing in front of us. We notice the difference, how it feels that different. And once everybody is in the space, then what's happening in the 4D mapping is that now we start working as a social body. So we stop being this individual body, at least starting to have the consciousness, because we're always a social body in a way, but we live as if we are individuals. But once we somehow, the whole system again is in place, then we start noticing that if I move this way, maybe that might provoke this other one to move this other way, and then the whole system starts moving. And the fact of going from sculpture 1 to sculpture 2 is also another difference, because in Constellations, all we want is to heal that system, right? So the facilitators start asking questions. How do you feel? Are you aware of anybody else in here? Where's your attention going? Those kinds of questions are not asked in 4D mapping. Once you enter, you have your role, you enter, you find your posture, which is lower level, middle level, high level. You need to make something with your body. In Constellation, you don't have to make sometimes you stand or you sit down or you lie down on the floor. And then again, those things mean different things as well in the Constellations. But anyways, in 4D mapping, you say something in the present, in the I voice, in the present moment. I feel stretched, because that comes off my body. If I really feel my body in the present moment, and this is my posture, what comes to me right now is I feel stretched. And that role in the system might actually feel stretched. But that didn't come from me thinking or connecting to anything. It just connected to my own body and how I'm feeling right now. Okay? Does it make any sense?
Oh, for me, this was very clear. Oh, thank you. I hope I'm half as clear when I'm talking. But the difference of the own body and the representative body, I think, was very clear. What do you say, Shannon?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was helpful.
And then I think we need to go very much in detail, because I think we could set up a 4D mapping so that it would nearly be a constellation. And we can probably, there are certain types of constellations which work with abstracts more than with persons. There also we could surely find more similarities, so that we don't see so much differences. So we need at one time to in detail look at every tiny practice and possibility of each of the methodologies, I think. But it's great that we are already in, oh, that was the wrong way, we've seen that. that we're already starting the discussion, because now I end with a couple of questions, because that's how far I got with my general differentiations. So one is, and Mary already started on this, I think there are differences in how the facilitator's role in the two methodologies. I don't have them just such clear to put it down, but I definitely feel very different when I do a constellation and when I do social processing theater. And for me, it has to do with, in constellation work, there is a hierarchy of knowledge. The facilitator knows the theory behind and knows about dynamics in the systems. That's very generally speaking, but it does make a difference for me. Whereas in social presencing theater, the facilitator knows like the structure of the practice we are doing. And that's all we are holding. And then it's an exploration of I want to say bodies that are there. Okay. But there's probably much more to it. And then the question we're gonna work on this weekend in a workshop here in Buenos Aires is in what can, oh, I think this got wrong in the I'll just say it how I'm not going to read it. In what can TPS add to the work of a facilitator of constellations, and vice versa? Okay, so how can both methodologies nurture each other?
Yeah.
So, and I thought this was my input, and I hope it serves as a trigger for exchange and elaboration on the topic, and to reach more clarity what is the difference and what is similar. And this is an ongoing process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nanne. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm curious, how many people here know Constellations or have participated in one? Okay, Rowena, great. Wonderful. So, so I feel like to start to open the conversation, how is this all sitting with you right now?
It's fascinating. Thank you. I'm thinking as I reflect on what you said, Nanne, that because I work in a large system, a healthcare system, and I've facilitated SPT with a couple of small groups of employees taking ULAB, but a dozen people, 15 people at most. And I can see that perhaps the more concrete system and problem focus of Constellations might be more comfortable to facilitate with employees in a system than SPT, which has that more contemplative aspect to it.
That is actually a great point, because I started like a conversation. There's a Spanish group, and somebody actually said doing constellations in organization is actually much easier, because it's almost as if it's more palpable. People can actually see like where they are and what actually happens, and what not exactly what they can do specifically, but it seems to have to open a clearer solution, let's say, even though it's again not a solution. But in SPT, he was asking the question, I still don't see how can actually even help the client. And in this situation, I wish I could just bring all of the people that I want to have here at the table. Like, for example, Laura Pastorini, she is also a teacher of Constellation and a trainer and teacher of social person in theater. I'm sure she has an answer for this, because she works a lot and uses SPT in organizations. But the idea, I think, is what you just said, Denise, is at the point, is this, that is more contemplative and kind of requires a quality of attention that will somewhat help you see or sense. Because again, it's not, what's the word? It's not a coincidence that the words that we use, again, in the SPT and theory, we say that SPT is helping the system to sense and perceive itself and to see itself through the practices. So this seeing itself, that there the word theater, place where things can be seen. So we're not seeing outside, we're seeing it ourselves as we do it. From there, some awareness can actually come up, and some sense of knowing can also be fostered. And then the kinds of conversations that we can actually hold as facilitators also will help the client get to a different place, let's say. But that is a common question, or thought.
Another question I would have is, in my limited experience with SPT, it can be very emotional. Even just doing the individual stuck. The times I've done it, there have been people in tears, and it's been wonderful, very powerful, and a surprise to many. But I know Otto, I've heard, jumps right into organizations and facilitates SPT without really building that safe container. I don't think that would work in my organization. Maybe I'm wrong. But I'm wondering, with Constellations, does it have as much emotional intensity?
I will say 100 times more.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad I asked then.
And the funny thing, if our one that listens to this emotion part of the SPT, she'll be like, that's not SPT. But it's true.
Let me jump in here. Okay. Yes, on first sight, and what it's most known for in family constellation works, there is a lot of tears. Because there's a lot of healing to be done, and so there's a lot of emotions expressed. Also anger and others. So yeah, you have all sorts there. It also depends on how you put it. So when working in an organization, for example, we would especially try not to go so deep in the emotions. And there are like techniques of how to ask. Yeah. So, for example, I don't ask in an organization, what do you feel? I ask, what do you see? What's your relation, and what is happening? Okay, so that leaves it on a more cognitive level. And you're not, and because you are in a certain surrounding and not representing a family member who is open to express whatever feeling, you will probably also not find this in a constellation, in an organizational context. There are much more aspects to it, which we also safeguard when we do constellations in organizations, of course. But there are kind of possibilities to luckily not have come up so much emotions. And if they come up, in general, the person who's doing it can deal with them, and the group can. So there's also the question, Denise, if you want to bring a method in, maybe it is more easy if not you from inside the organization do it, but if you have a trainer from outside. Okay, that's very often, the external consultant. We have so many external consultants because it's many times it's easier to have something been said from somebody from the outside than from even if the one from the inside knows it much better.
Thanks.
And I wanted to add something there that is so interesting. Like in constellations, we say trust the field, because it's whatever happened, it's the field bringing it up, because the field can sustain it, because the field can actually work it. That's why it appears. So as the facilitator needs to, in my mind, it needs to have a lot of trust in that. Otherwise, it will not be able to handle. But then it wouldn't appear, because it's almost not invited. So I think also in this case, the person that facilitates the constellation, what appears, it's kind of how much, my teacher said, it's like a lens, like a camera lens. How open you can open it. That's where it will come. And then it will be held, because it's what is there. Otherwise, it wouldn't have shown up. And in SPT, we talk about trust the body, in the sense of trust where it wants to go, like an individual body, like trust when it shows there. And if it just wants to do like this, and you go, what is this? Makes no sense to me. Trust it, go there, feel it, intensify it, and really get there. And the information is there. So if you just go, oh, it seems like maybe it's just you don't want to go, you will get a little less information, even though this is a different shape. That's why when we do 20-minute dance, we put so much emphasis on what's the shape. Again, how's the shape feeling? And then when we talk about the social body, it's like where the social body or situation wants to go. It's not where the facilitator wanted it to go. It's like where the whole situation itself wants to go, like where my body wants to go from here once I'm here, and like intensify. And if I really listen, okay, there was a movement over here that started happening. Where the body wants to go, because the body is always wanting and looking for health and well-being. And I feel that the field in the constellation is doing the same. It's looking for harmony. That's why it's called the orders of love. It's looking for to reestablish somehow that order that got a little distorted.
Where would you suggest, is there like a classic reference text or guide for systemic constellations for someone who doesn't know anything about it? Where would you suggest starting?
Nanne, you are muted.
Well, I'm afraid, Denise, now I'm lacking material in English, because as I'm German and working in a Spanish-speaking country, all the literature I have will probably not be of much use for you, but probably some of this is accessible in English, but I would like to check first. So if you don't have anything straight on mind, I've got a very good English book from a British guy, I just remember. And of course there's Jacob Stam, which is translated, which is a great book also. But those two will do. I will get the information.
I can put it also underneath the video in the YouTube channel.
Super, thank you.
So Constellations work, it sounds really similar to psychodrama. Is it?
Here it has much more similarities on the way it looks, but there's another difference. I don't know psychodrama, but I know you play the role of the person. So I imagine I'm the mom and I do what the mom does, but this is what I think the mom does. We don't do that in constellation work. This is more similar to what you know from social processing theater. In constellation work, we just we represent the role, but we don't play it. We kind of we are the body that is there in relation to near or close to the other person. And what happens to me in first physically? Okay, is there attraction or is there rejection? In some constellations, I only ask, now that the person comes in, you feel better or worse? I don't want to know more. I just want to know better or worse. I don't, but this is like, as I said, there are many different streams of constellation work, and to do it in work-related and organizational themes is definitely different to how you do it in family situations. So it's a bit difficult to talk about it in general, but I thank you very much, because I always get people who know about what was it you brought up about psychodrama, and as I don't know enough about it, it would be good for me to not study psychodrama, because I think that's too far, but there must be literature about differences about psychodrama and constellation work, and to get it a bit more clear what's the difference. So that's the first one I can tell you, because I've seen it.
And we're getting close to the time, and I feel like in my mind I don't see, I mean, yes, there are some differences, but I just don't see it as unconcealable. Is that a word? Like that you cannot reconcile them, you cannot like put them together. In fact, it seems to me as if each of them are looking different parts of the same thing, like in any case they're systemic, both of them. And to me it's almost a you can use constellation in this, in this part of your work with the organization, and then SPT in this other part, and I feel like it could definitely, they can somewhat, at least in my view, like complement each other, and see, it could help you see different things. I wouldn't, and also I guess when there's a very experienced practitioner or either could say, it seems as if a constellation will be more helpful right now, or an SPT exercise will be more helpful right now. But I think they both have their, and what I say that they are like first cousins is because 4D mapping was created by constellators as well. Like the day they got together to create this exercise was Otto, Arowana, and some other people from the Presencing Institute, and Jacob Stam, who's Nanne mentioned, and some other constellators. So each of them kind of put their own little piece of it, and they created the 4D mapping exercise. So it does have, little pieces of both, but I feel what makes the biggest difference is the emphasis on sculpture 1 to sculpture 2. Is the current reality. This is the current reality, and where this current reality wants to go. So, and then we see what we collected with the social body when we do that. Because what Arowana said also the other day at the end of the training, that you do a 4D mapping not because of the 4D mapping itself, but because of the conversation that can be generated by actually doing the exercise. The conversation of, I felt, I saw, I did. Those are the things that we say. And then we start almost listening from the system where it wants to go. And then because again, if we follow the you, after we do the exercise, we're kind of coming out and crystallizing. And then when we start listening, then we could form prototypes that could actually take us to something to do. But this something to do doesn't come from the exercise. It comes from actually being able to see it in the conversation. And then where are the points, like the leverage points, that could be then made prototypes. And then we can see the new actually manifested through the prototypes.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Can we have a short feedback round, although we are over time, especially from the people who haven't talked, Christine and Rowena. And I want to hear from Shannon and Denise, of course, as well. How do we do that, Mery? You have an idea?
Yes. I feel like, like I always do, is just to take a moment to let all this sink in and then see what comes up. It could be in the form of a sentence. It could be in the form of a question or a feeling.
Well, I feel fascinated, and I noticed so many similarities and also open new possibilities. I like the comparison of family and an organization, how you ask the questions and how you safeguard the different fields and the different contexts. I had experimented both, so I could also sense and I could understand from the experimental point of view. And that actually was interesting to get this briefing in this 1 hour with how they can connect and how different they are. And also I liked what Mery ended by saying, that they can be there can be a conciliation between the two, and you can play with both.
Thank you.
And I'm also curious about the psychodrama, because I have also experimented that. And now I'm curious. So if you find out more, Nanne, the difference, I would like to hear from that. Thank you.
I'm just going to end with the question I wrote down that I thought I really enjoyed was, when that person comes in the room, do you feel better or worse?
Thank you.
I would just add, in closing, I'm curious and motivated to learn more.
Thank you.
I want to add one more thing. Oh, go on, Janet.
Oh, go ahead.
When we were talking about the feelings in the organization, I had a sense that if we're sensing our body, the feelings are part of it, as we know. And so creating a new paradigm for in the organization that it's okay, because we come from that reality that, oh, you're crying, what's wrong? And so making shifts on that, maybe it's after they are more at ease, have that, and even if you cry, you cry. So the fear that we as facilitators might have of emotions coming up. So I'm curious, maybe in the next possibility, to hear how to deal with that in organizations.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add, I'm leaving with curiosity and just thinking of possibilities.
Thank you.
Well, I'm really grateful, and it was so, I don't know, I want to say cozy, but this is not a very good word. I felt so I found all of you like sustaining me and helping me to get more clear and listen to me, and that was very pleasurable. So if I have to go for a next job interview or I have to present something where I'm like unsure about, I will call you, girl, and ask you that I can make a pleasure here. They were just great. Thank you so much. And also I got a lot of ideas and inputs from.
Yes, you should definitely call us. We will listen you up in your greatness and in your calmness. Yeah, and to me, I think what is bubbling up is wanting to continue the conversation, because right now it feels as if it's just the beginning. Like we started scratching the surface. So I feel like I feel motivated and inspired to continue to bring this conversation to this space and what else we can learn. So thank you very much. I never leave spaces for minutes, actual minutes for announcements, but I want to start having that discipline. But I'm mainly like, I would like to mention that I started a challenge, a 20-day, 20 dances of 20 minutes because of the year 2020. And I started that in Spanish, but I want to do it in English as well. So, and I'm recording those, and I'm planning, I'm thinking of putting them in a playlist so that people can actually use them anytime. So that is coming up. And also, because I'm so inspired with the gift economy, I want to create a video about the gift economy and with the challenge of Nipun Mehta. He mentioned this, like the small acts of kindness challenge. And that I think it gives people a really good sense of what this gift economy kind of is about. So that also I'll bring in. And I'm creating a WhatsApp channel to make it easy for me to spread all this news. So if you have a WhatsApp number and you want to send it to me, you have my email, then I can add you to a broadcast list, because I'm trying to be better at telling people what's happening, and so people know. Okay, so that's the end. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next Tuesday and working with the interior condition. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Nanne. Pleasure to get to know you better.
Thank you, Nanne.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.